Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for their responses to the first part of this story. I've shared it with a few people before, but was always hesitant to share it with others like this. Originally, I was inspired to share this story by a post asking people to share their first paranormal experiences. I never had the intention of writing out anything more than that. But after posting on Reddit, Facebook, etc., for others to read, I keep getting asked for more of the story. So, I've decided to tell it in parts. Hope you enjoy. And for a side note, like part 1, the layout of the house is important to understand for most of the story. I'm not going to repost the details here, but check out part 1 if you need a refresher. Anyways, by the time I was 8, I had started school and become the weird kid to most. Sure, I had some friends, but they mostly just tolerated my strangeness. I was considered strange for many reasons. I hated sports and loved nerdy things. I was more into playing piano or guitar than cars or trucks. I was socially awkward, and I didn't like field trips. Honestly, all those things are fairly understandable reasons as to why one would be singled out for being weird. But there was one other reason I was considered strange. The first time someone asked if we could have a sleepover at my house, without thinking, I excitedly responded, "Sure, let's do it." But just so you know, my house is haunted. Of course, by the end of the school day, my entire class knew me as the scaredy cat and thought I was absolutely crazy. Living in a small town like we did, word spread to my parents and grandparents by the end of the following day. I was humiliated, not just because of my classmates, but now my dad and his parents are wondering if I should be taken away from my mom because she had traumatized me. Sure, the things that she subjected me to were traumatizing, but not in the way they thought, or even in a way that would reveal itself, entail later in life, that is. Plus, my dad was just as traumatizing to me as she was. To be honest, I didn't find the haunting stuff very traumatizing at all. In fact, I was quite intrigued by the paranormal at that age. In my time living at the house on 8th Street, I hadn't experienced anything as intense as the staircase incident. The idea of the house being haunted was more of, well, just an idea. It had been so long since I'd experienced anything substantial that I began to wonder if the house was even haunted at all. Every now and then, usually late at night, you'd hear a door close on its own, or a small creak in the floor would jolt you out of falling asleep. Maybe a couple of short notes on the piano would play on their own. But it was infrequent, and any time I tried to bring it up to my mom, or her many friends who seemed to come and go, I was completely shut down. Mom would even try to play it off as if I was being overdramatic and deny anything paranormal had even happened. Honestly, thinking back on it, that was probably more traumatic to me than most of what happened in the house. I honestly enjoyed having most of my mother's friends around, and occasionally I'd catch them telling my mom or one another about something that happened to them in the house. It always made me curious as to why things weren't happening around me, and why I couldn't experience it and learn more about why they were happening. One thing I didn't like, though, was that my mom always seemed to have a boyfriend. I didn't care that my mom had a boyfriend, but I just didn't care for the guys that she brought around. There was one guy who was kind of alright, Dane. I wasn't thrilled about him, but he was nice and understanding. Mom was with him for about a year, before things started to get rocky. Once they started getting bad, things started to happen in the house again. The usual creaks and piano noises seemed to pick up a bit, and they started happening during the day. Our cats started staring off into random doorways, especially upstairs. The balcony room became unbearable to be in, and I started feeling things in the house I'd never felt before. One early evening, near the end of Dane and Mom's relationship, they had left me at home to go to a friend's house for a bit. I was okay with it. I'd just gotten a Nintendo 64 and was adequately distracted from anything going on. We'd set up the TV at the front of the big living room so everyone could see, and I was sitting in the middle of the floor glued to Castlevania 64. An hour had gone by, and I was wrapped into my video game when I heard Mom say, "Oh, hey," as if greeting an unexpected guest from the living room behind me. It wasn't an odd occurrence for friends to stop by the house or just walk in the back door, so I didn't think anything of it. But then it hit me. The back door didn't open, and worst of all, Mom wasn't home. My heart sank. I reached up and shut off the console in front of me, then turned off the TV with the remote. I sat in total silence, staring at the curved, black TV screen, hoping to catch a reflection of what was behind me, or at least hear something else to confirm that I wasn't going crazy. Eventually, I stood and turned around. Facing the kitchen from the front of the living room, I could see into the smaller living room to my left, the staircase, the open door to the bathroom, and into the kitchen. Then, suddenly, I began to get the feeling that people were watching me from every open door in the house. I couldn't see anything, but I knew they were there. I bolted towards the front door, running across the street to the kids playing in the baseball field, catty-corner to me. I recognized one of the kids playing wasn't in my class, probably didn't know who I was. He was older and bigger than me. Panicked, I told him there was someone in my house, and I begged him to come check it out with me. He must not have known who I was, because he happily walked with me and went through my home. Walking inside, the feeling was still there. It was summertime and very hot, a humid Kansas day. We were being watched. I don't think he felt it like I did, but I knew we were being watched. He walked through most of the house with me, and everything looked normal. There was nobody else there. Halfway through going through the upstairs, Mom and Dane came back. Once I explained what had happened and why my new friend was at our house, Mom was furious. She thanked him and escorted him outside, and I was told never to do that again. A couple of days went by, and I realized something. The fun allure of my house being haunted was gone, and I felt truly scared of my home for the first time in my life. I decided to move my Nintendo into Mom's room, so I could play in a smaller space when nobody was home. I was constantly watching over my shoulder and listening for anything out of the ordinary. The next time Mom and Dane left, it was after a large argument. They decided to run off and argue in the car or get high or who knows what. But I was glad they'd left. I was cozied up in my mom's room with my Nintendo and the window AC blasting. I brought up some snacks and a drink, and I was happy. There were only two ways in and out of the room: the door to the hallway and the small, completely blocked off door from my mom's closet into the balcony room. Sure, I was scared, but the fear from the other day was starting to wear off, and I was trying to keep it off my mind. Now I'd been playing games for a while. I got up to run to the bathroom and rushed back upstairs to keep playing my game. And yet again, I was glued in front of the TV. Then, out of nowhere, I felt someone's finger touch my back, near my left shoulder. Not only did they touch me, but I felt the finger snag and slightly pull my shirt as the finger fell off my back. I'd made one major mistake. I'd sat back down with my back facing the open door to the hallway. I lost it. Again, I ran outside as fast as I could. I ran over to my grandparents' house across the street. Of course, they didn't believe anything I had to say. And Mom, when she got home and I'd finally told her why I ran off, completely shut me down again and treated me like I was making it all up. The next day, Dane left for good. I went to spend the weekend at my dad's. I remember not being surprised, but somewhat sad that Dane was gone. When I made it back to my mom's house, the air felt thicker than it had when I'd left. And even though the blinds were all open, and sun shining into every room, the entire house felt darker than it had before. Mom and I didn't talk about what had happened the week before, or about Dane. We just sat around and watched TV together. That night, I'm not sure if it was a full moon, but it was brighter than usual, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was sleeping with my mother, and the entire room was lit from the moonlight. I found comfort in that I could see everything in the room. Mom's bed was placed in the far back corner of the house, up against a window. I remember lying in bed between Mom and the open window. A cool breeze had already put her to sleep, and I was close behind. All of a sudden, I heard the all too familiar creak of the first step of the staircase. Someone was walking up the stairs. The bedroom door was open and looked out into the hallway and over the staircase. I'd laid there on my side, with my head propped up over my mom's shoulder, just high enough so I could peek at whatever was coming. Of course, the light was still out in the hallway, but some light bled through the first floor and casted a silhouette of a tall, skinny man walking up the stairs. I was relieved. Not only was it not the invisible stairwalker from my first experience, it looked like Dane was back and walking up the stairs. I laid there, expecting Mom to wake up and realize Dane had come home. She was a hard sleeper, though, and the creaking of the stairs didn't seem to wake her. As the silhouette walked up the stairs, past the view of the door, I waited for Dane to come into my mom's room. I heard him walking, taking slow, easy steps around the banister, further down the hallway, and turn into my mom's room. But when he walked into the room, I realized that Dane's tall, slender figure wasn't walking through the door. The silhouette stayed simply that, a black shadow of a person, now somewhat transparent in the bright moonlight, with no features whatsoever. The silhouette walked over to the side of the bed, furthest from me. Standing right in front of where my mom was laying, he picked up the covers and crawled into bed next to my mother. Then he vanished. The house was silent. I laid next to Mom, petrified, watching the covers where the silhouette had just laid fall flat again. I laid there, staring into the room, watching and listening for anything and everything until the sun came up. I told Mom about what happened, and she once again denied everything. Within a couple of months, Mom was dating someone new. This guy was an alcoholic, an absolute idiot, and loved to take all of his problems out on us. I hadn't seen this silhouette since that night, but other things were starting to happen. Different things were starting to come out of the woodwork, so to speak, and it's not getting better. The worse things get between Mom and her new boyfriend, the worse the things get in the house. Oh, and to top it all off, Mom's pregnant again.